So we're nearly done. I think we've probably got a row left and then enough for our cast off. So we'll see. I still get that wrong sometimes, but I'll show you after this row a simple trick you can use. Again, taught to me by my mother, but every knitter knows this, I'm sure. But it's a simple trick for you to use to measure out if you've got enough for your cast off. Because this throw is really long now, once I'm finished, to turn the work, I will need to stand up to be able to do that. Otherwise the throw just gets twisted, as I mentioned earlier, and that's not fun. I don't like that. Just be mindful of your posture too when you turn the work. It's always exciting when you get to this point because you can see well and truly the labours of your effort, and your reward is so quick compared to a normal knitting project. Okay. So now we need to turn this baby, and at 5 kilos in weight, it's not always so easy, especially after you've done a million rows. But essentially all you do, 2 hands for support, stand up, turn it, give it a good stretch out, make sure it's not twisted, and start again. Now I'm pretty sure I've got enough left for my cast off row, but to check, stretch out your blanket as much as you can along the needle. The long needle is really handy for this. The rule of thumb is that you need 4 times the length of the work you've created, but be generous with those lengths. So I will stretch out my yarn arm completely and then count 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're good, we've got enough. Relief. My favourite cast off method is a knit one, purl one. I like that the cast off row then sits on top of the work. I'm not so keen on how it falls over with an all garter stitch cast off. All right, so we're knitting one, we're purling one. So you take the yarn to the front of the work, the needle goes into the front of the stitch but in the opposite direction. The yarn goes over the top and off. Now it's at this point that I'm really keeping an eye on my tension of these stitches to make sure they're all the same. It's time for a purl. Just in the same way I've knitted with a regular tension, I'm casting off. With a regular tension, I'm not making this a tight cast off, because once the work is off the sticks, I'm going to stretch out that cast off and cast on to make sure they are the same and to help all the stitches fall into the right place. good. Nearly there. Just made it actually. I'm not normally cutting myself so finely. Okay, but you're done and you've made an extreme knitted throw all by yourself for you to enjoy. So what I do now is essentially tie my ends in. So I use a needle and thread. I follow the line of the stitches, I get my yarn, I always tie it to the back of the work, not the front of the work, and I hide the stitch inside another and then secure it in place. Sometimes I don't do that and I just leave the ends out because I quite like that too. It depends on the overall aesthetic you want. You can also just wind it in and not stitch it up if you couldn't be bothered. There's no right or wrong, you do what pleases you, but it's a very simple process and you end up with something beautiful to enjoy. And if you look after it, it will last forever.